because I imagine she's going to be in Central Florida sometime in May or at least June, from what I'm hearing. I'm hoping that I'm going to ask her what she personally would like Bill to be called. As a millennial, I really am vying for him to be called the first dude. But I think that he might go with first lad, or knowing President Clinton, he worked very hard for that title, so we will probably just have to call him President Clinton, and we will probably call Hillary Madam President, which has a very good ring to it if you ask me. So, of course, my name is Aaron Darr, and it is a privilege. It is really awesome that you guys have this here in the village. I told people in New York, my partner and I, we travel back and forth from here to New York City, and they know the villages. There are a lot of people that know the villages. So I told them, and they said, "You better bring some body armor."
That's right.
And I said, "What do you need?" And they said, "Pretty red area." And I said, "Well, good, because I love a challenge." So it is wonderful, truly, being here in the villages today to speak about the importance of staying politically active, aware, engaged, and involved in the next 18 months leading up to the presidential election cycle of 2016. And my campaigning that I will do all over the state for Hillary for America, which is the now presidential campaign of former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. By the way, I've been working with Ready for Hillary. Yeah. I've been working with Ready for Hillary for 2 years now. Marie knows that I have been everywhere. This is a really big state. I knew it was big before, but until you have gone from every corner, I mean, there are parts of this state where I think I'm in Louisiana or Georgia because there are deers, there are animals that are not native to what we consider Florida to be. But what a beautiful state it is. I've been in red areas, I've been in blue areas, I've been in yellow areas because we do have some libertarians in this state. And I've been everywhere, and it truly has been so wonderful getting to know people for the last year and a half, traveling and talking to Democratic women's clubs and Democratic groups and partisan, nonpartisan organizations about why Hillary Clinton should run for president. And I'm very happy that last week that finally came into fruition. So, yes. I want to thank Shelley Newman for inviting me here to speak with all of you today, and to the state president, Marie McKenna, coming from Highlands. Are you from Highlands County? To be here today as I preach what I like to call is the Hillary Gospel to the congregation, which is you, and I will refer to you today as the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuits Movement. Throughout the past year, I have traveled all over the state of Florida, and I've spoken about issues that all too often affect women and children, seniors and our veterans, teachers and students, millennials and middle-class families. In the process of listening, one thing has become very clear. Hillary Clinton needs to run for president. For too long, the history of women has been a history of silence, and it still is today. It is time to break the silence, to act on behalf of women and girls everywhere whose experiences go unnoticed and whose voices and words go unheard. The battle for women's rights is being fought more than ever before, and that is why we are all here today. We are here today to tell those who oppose us and what we stand for, that women's rights and women's issues are not a luxury. It is not a luxury to be told that you count in life. It is a human right. It is not a luxury to have the same rights as anybody else. It is a human right. And it is not a luxury to have the same opportunities as men. It is a God-given human right. Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all. There are too many injustices and abuses towards women and girls that are unacceptable. And frankly, it's not just in the developing world. It's right here at home in America, and especially in the South, and right here in the state of Florida. That is why it is so crucial that we shatter that highest and hardest glass ceiling for women and girls everywhere in 2016 and elect Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States of America. You know, electing Hillary Clinton as president, believe it or not, it is not just an effort on behalf of Americans. It is a global effort and global opportunity for the world's women and girls to live in a world knowing that there are no limits to their potential, to their dreams, and that what they can achieve in the years ahead of the 21st century. And little girls to know that they can grow up in a world knowing that they can be anything that they want to be. Yes, even President of the United States of America. This is our shared opportunity to tap into the unexplored reservoir of potential, economic and social, to globally give women a seat at the table and a voice in the ideas that help to shape the fabric of our lives. An opportunity that will ripple across nations all across the globe and send a message that is very clear. A message that is both inclusive and equal. A message in knowing that if women ran the world, there would be no more war. Some of you might not know this. That's actually an Afghan women's program. Isn't that remarkable? If women ran the world, then the feelings that many women and girls whose rights are non-existent, whose voices are silenced, would feel something that they dare never dream. And that is hope. People often ask me why, especially as a young man, why I am so invested in human rights, in particular the human rights of women and girls, and the many issues that affect women. To those individuals, I often say this: women's rights are not a women's issue. They are a family issue. And they are issues that can affect us all if we do not step up to the plate and bring voice to, let's face it, as you were saying, half of the nation. Half of the nation. You know, as I travel Florida and give speeches at college campuses, religious and civic organizations, to both partisan and nonpartisan groups, I often think globally. I think of the women and girls at home in America and around the world who suffer from domestic violence, as my own mother had growing up from my father. Mm-hmm. And I think of the women who suffer domestic violence around the world at the hands of their own husbands and their families. I often think of women and girls who are sold into slavery or prostitution, all because of human greed. I think of babies who are suffocated or their spines that are broken simply because they are born girls, which is still very common in places like China, where they still refuse to embrace women's rights, and just this month have incarcerated feminist women who have spoken out for their own human rights in the country of China. I think of the countless women who are raped in their own communities, and the thousands of women who are subjected to rape in the name of war and at the hands of their own husbands, and the women who are beaten, stoned to death, set on fire, tortured, or killed because their marriage diaries are deemed too small, and other nations' cultures who deem these acceptable practices towards women and girls, including female genital mutilation. It is simple. Everything that I just said is a crime. These are crimes against women and girls. When people ask you what the glass ceiling is about, every crack in that glass ceiling is one of those women and girls, not just in America, but all over the world, who are dying for someone to step up to the plate and shatter that ceiling. All too often, we hear of so many individuals who feel as if the economy, of course, isn't working for they or their families. Families whose lives are meant to be filled with opportunity, the same opportunities as anyone else who may want to make a good life for themselves, their children, and their families, while working hard and playing by the rules to move forward the middle class and lift others up in their communities out of poverty. You know, with an ever-increasing one-sided public state debt management monetary policy that seems to serve the wealthiest of Floridians and forgets those who live on a minimum wage, we often see so many Floridians and others across our nation who are struggling to make it, having to choose between rent and groceries, utility bills, and healthcare costs, but still hoping that they don't get sick because they still can't afford health insurance. Speaking of health insurance, how about a round of applause for the Affordable Care Act? More than 16.4 million Americans. 16.4 million Americans. It feels so good saying that when the Republicans thought it wouldn't get past 4. Enrolled in the current healthcare exchange. And with Florida, we did something right. We did something right. Florida leading the nation in members who enrolled in the healthcare exchange. And many seniors who for the first time in their life now have access to healthcare. It's wonderful. Of course, young people who can't afford to go to college, pursue their own dreams, and those who do but wish to have degrees and not to acquire mass amounts of debt. I know that because I am $90,000 in student loan debt. If you ask me, crony capitalism is wrong. The lobbyists and the special interests who often circle around elected officials and influential organizations like sharks are influencing many of the leaders who are deciding what is best for our nation and for our families. It's simple. I'm going to quote Elizabeth Warren here. I love her. If banks can borrow money at 0.75% interest rate, so can students. Students shouldn't have to borrow money at loans at an average of 6.8% interest rates when the world's banks can borrow at a significantly less amount. We need to be investing in the millennial generation and the world's next leaders, not holding them down and flooding them with debt. We need to, of course, care for our seniors and our veterans who time and time again are having their pensions, Social Security, benefits, and health insurance cut and diced in budget cuts, while many of those who are serving and are fighting for the special interests all across our nation and in the state of Florida, rather than fighting for every single one of you. We need a champion. We need a champion for our families, and Hillary Clinton is that champion. We need to elect a president who will tackle these issues while taking on the oil companies, the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, and the predatory student loan agencies. We need to elect a president, of course, this is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, who's going to take on the NRA, the National Hillary Clinton is the girl to do that. The NRA that promotes women carrying guns on their person to stop a potential attack by a rapist. But here's a thought. Instead of expecting our daughters to carry guns on them everywhere they go, how about we teach our sons not to rape? You realize that statistics nationally and even in the state of Florida show that a woman is more likely to have her gun turned on her and used against her in trying to stop an attack during an altercation by a rapist. Guns do not always protect and work. This is pure rhetoric and social intolerance, and this must stop. We need to elect a president who will take on the current 20th century infrastructure system and build it into programs, into templates that will build a bridge to the future, which will include alternate uses of clean energy and renewable resources while protecting our environment, of course our wildlife, the Everglades, and creating millions upon millions of good-paying middle-class jobs all across the nation and right here in the state of Florida. The current infrastructure system we see simply leaves out those who have no other means of transportation if they do not have an automobile, which of course makes it very difficult for one to hold a job. And that is if they are lucky to have a job in this very tough economy. People who walk miles upon miles and wait hours upon hours for a bus just trying to get to and from work. Seniors, of course, who walk miles and miles and wait hours and hours at bus stops to get their prescription medications and groceries. To the single mothers who are working 2 to 3 jobs just trying to get by to make a better life for their children so they have every opportunity that they weren't allotted in life so they can truly live up to their own God-given potential. Throughout Hillary Clinton's 40-plus years in public service, she has fought for every single issue that I have just mentioned. And she will continue to fight for these issues and our families and the most vulnerable in our nation as president. Hillary believes, of course, in what we can do when we all work together. Remember that when we all used to work together? When we fight together, not with each other, and building our nation's people up rather than tearing them down. You know, if you ask me, the race for president in 2016 has clearly already begun, and it's becoming more and more clear. The conservatives and the Republicans, in the state of Florida especially, they have ideas, but they are bad ideas. Bad ideas for middle-class families and bad ideas for women, children, seniors, veterans, and virtually most of anyone in our country who holds a job that is working in the middle class. We see candidates who time and time again are putting forth an agenda that is discriminatory and unfair towards women. And I will tell you, the first chance that I get to see Senator Rand Paul in this state, I am going to ask him if he's ever had an abortion, and if he ever plans on having an abortion, and what he plans on doing with his uterus, his ovaries, and how that all works well for him. I would love to see his answer. I've never seen a candidate for president that focuses so much on what women, gays, and minorities can and cannot do in life. You know, we see candidates who support legislation that targets women and girls unfairly and dictates and decides the choices and decisions of women and girls throughout the courses of their life. Whether it be equal pay for equal work, paid maternity leave, paid sick leave, having access to reproductive health care choices, which, yes, Rand Paul, includes access to abortion, which should be legal, safe, and very rare. Having access to contraceptives, condoms, sex education, and the morning after pill. There are so many pieces of legislation that often target women, and why is it that so many of the Republicans who are both running or considering running for president in 2016 support stripping women of their basic human rights is beyond me. For example, this past month, a former governor of the state of Florida by the name of Jeb Bush, and I quote, he actually said that I thought I was reading The Onion. I thought I was reading a satire site, and I loved it because he actually was foolish enough to say it on video. Quote, women on welfare should be able to get their life together and find a husband, unquote. Because it's so easy, so easy. This also comes as Jeb Bush just this week announced that he was going to support raising the retirement age. It's going to be interesting to watch him lose his own state. And I'm going to make sure he doesn't. I know each and every single one of you in this room is going to make sure that we never hear the words President Jeb Bush. Mentioning the Bushes, if you ask me, I'm starting to see a pattern here. It takes a Clinton to clean up after a Bush. After 8 years of President Bill Clinton, who handed President George W. Bush the best economy in our nation's history, then he went and destroyed it. We cannot make that same mistake a third time. President Obama, of course, has made remarkable and commendable progress, but we must continue to build on that progress and rebuild as a nation, rebuild our people, and restore faith in our government and our nation that is broken and as partisan as it has ever been before. 2 unnecessary wars, of course, that were paid by credit cards by the American people under, but who else? The Bush administration, and the depletion and destructions of millions upon millions of good-paying middle-class jobs and the outsourcing of American jobs, which are now overseas. Thank you, Mitt Romney. He wonders why he lost the election. Especially those in the automotive industry and within technology. The economic future of the United States is at a crucial, this is so true, the economic future of the United States is at a crucial standstill until we elect the next president of the United States in 2016, whoever she is. You know, Bill Clinton created over 22 million jobs. That is a president. We had a national surplus and not a national debt under President Clinton. Now, how is it, of course, in a matter of 8 years that President Bush could have destroyed our nation's economic opportunity and potential is still a question that we must ask ourselves in the coming 18 months. It's his brother, Jeb Bush, who supported many of these decisions, who is very vocal still about having supported many of these decisions. decides whether or not he's going to run for president of the United States in 2016.